So we're here at ETH Denver, day 2 of the main event, and I'm here with Danning Sui of Flashbots and Amir Bandeali of 0x/Matcha. And so Danning, would you be able to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do at Flashbots on the data side, and just give us a kind of journey through your life in crypto.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this event. I'm Danny. I'm data scientist at Flashbots. Before this, I was actually the scientist at 0x, so I'm pretty familiar with everything we're talking about. So before that, I was a data analyst at Consensus, so that's where I started my crypto data journey. I learned a lot about very basic, raw format of how Ethereum data look like, transactions, how user interaction, activity back then. There wasn't much going on back then until DeFi summer, and that's when I started looking to DEX trading. And I learned about 0x relayers and the early DEX, and I was building dashboard about it, and then got this opportunity to join the team. And then I guess I dig deeper and realized there's a lot of things happening in the settlement layer about MEV that's also related to the user's experience on DEX, and I got into the rabbit hole and joined Flashbots. Yeah.
Cool. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I was just say I can confirm that Danning was deep down the MEV rabbit hole at 0x, so it's sad that she left the best company in the world, but
yeah, I can confirm that too.
The Flashbots is a good alternative.
It's a lot of love there, right? So your team recently produced orderflow.art, which is a Sankey data diagram that will show you order flow. Can you tell us a bit about it, summarize the key points of that article that you produced, which people should go and read?
So I guess that started as an internal knowledge transfer of when I joined the Flashbots, a lot of the people at Flashbots team already is looking into DEX trading space, understanding how the dynamics or how the order flow through each parties. And I shared my knowledge, what I learned at 0x, and I feel like it's really similar work what I was doing when I was at 0x, which is you're labeling the router on the onchain data and try to understand from which front end the retail flow comes in, and how did each front end or router settle through different liquidity providers. I had a great teammate who wanted to launch this thing as a website, and so we launched it, and I feel like now a lot more people understand how the opaque party A and party 2 are integrated together, but then there's another one that's integrated, it's all tangled around, looks like. I guess the summary points would be there's a lot of interesting trends we see from, the routing layer. First is that RFQ liquidity from the market makers has always been actually growing since the past 3 years. 0x 1inch was very early on, integrating those market makers. When I look at the charts, it actually looks like different type of RFQ system are coming up. There's this Hashflow company where they basically talk to all the market makers, and one good thing I think they do is that you see a lot of small solvers on CowSwap or other platform where they are really small team, 2 people. They are trying to routing through AMN liquidity. They don't really have the capacity or resources to talk to market maker, and they just tap through those liquidity through Hashflow. So I thought that's good. I also see RFQ liquidity become smarter over time, which is the knowledge I've seen when I working at 0x back then, where you see the market maker, they trying to skip the DEX aggregator layer, they trying to skip whatever fee they might be charged for, and they go to the order flow owner, for example, the wallet directly. You see MetaMask Swap is pinging the market maker directly, and it's they're getting sophisticated over time as well. So I think another big trend is that you see different projects, especially the big one was the traffic. They're outsourcing the router, or adopting the solver model. For example, CowSwap started its model. 1inch Fusion came afterwards, and then Uniswap X now is doing that too. I'm actually curious how 0x thinks about it. Are you guys thinking about outsourcing to adopt the solver model, or
We're exploring it, but it's not our first priority. I think intents are kind of a hot buzzword right now, and I think they do have some benefits, right? They generally will protect against MEV in a better way, but that is also addressed by just having an RFQ system. But I'm not actually sure if all else equal, an intent-based system or a solver model would provide better pricing than just like having optimal routing, which is what we're very focused on right now. Because in a solver system with intents, like you now have this third-party solver as a middleman, right? And they need to make money, so there's some extra margin there that wouldn't exist otherwise. So my theory is that it actually will not have the best pricing at the end of the day, but there are other advantages. It's also very good for like getting wide coverage of markets, right? Like for a solver system, you don't need to integrate every single liquidity source individually. So pros and cons, but yeah, right now we're very focused on just building the optimal routing.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. So one of the phrases in that article that was published was decentralization in DeFi is far from guaranteed, so we must be intentional about the market structure that our mechanisms create. And there's a lot to unpack there, so maybe you could give us a brief summary of what that means and where it comes from.
I think that language comes from the comparison where when you see, we're building this thing called DeFi, it's supposedly to be better than the TradFi. And what you see people criticize about TradFi is like there's like 3 market maker providing liquidity against the retail. It's opaque. Certainly everything on DeFi is better in the sense of that like data are on chain. It's not really quite everything's transparent, like unless you have the market maker label, like you dig into, you might know someone knows them. But I think the problem we're trying to point out is that like if you look at today's RFQ system across DEX trading platform, it's also 3 market maker who are very competitive. There might be a few other smaller ones, but they really cannot compete on big pairs that is providing liquidity to users. So is it really different from TradFi, the thing we're building? And I'm sure 0x also have more thinking about it, and like some people criticize it as it is PFOF, like payment for order flow, because a market maker is paying fee and then like to get this retail flow, and you are showing no fee in the front end saying, oh, this is RFQ, there is no fee, but there is a fee implicitly. So I'm curious how you guys think about this critique as well.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily bad that a few market makers are doing the majority of the volume. That might just be the optimal market structure. Like, in some cases, it's better to actually have fewer participants because they don't need to compete against each other as much. Therefore, they can actually like provide better pricing because they have, they're receiving a higher percentage of the flow. They can kind of make more money by providing better pricing. Whereas if you have like a ton of different market makers, you're kind of splitting out the profits, and there might not actually be incentive for them to participate or be as good. So I think what's important in my eyes is like having a more or less open system where there can be competition, right? It's not like if the 3 market makers leave, all of a sudden all liquidity disappears because other market makers would come in to kind of take their spot. And then you also have automated market makers as a fallback. So, there's never really a situation where like all the liquidity just disappears.
Yeah, I see. What about the other aspect, like say, like for example, you see all the order flow, power of the front end. If you look at all the top ones, like Uniswap is taking 30% of all the retail flow, 1inch is like another 20%. They all combined together is like over 50%. And imagine like one day they can just like decide to switch the front end toggle to be, I'm routing all the stuff to RFQ. So that's another type of like centralization thing that's like, this whole DeFi platform we're building is really fragile depending on one central point.
Yeah, I think that's true, but it's also kind of just how the world works, I guess, right? The people who own the distribution have the power to kind of swap out the back end, right? It's not unique to our space, and yeah, I think it's a hard problem to solve. Like, even if you had decentralized front ends, it's like, who is pushing the code at the end of the day? So I think there will just be like more competition because the space, has lower barriers to entry. So I don't think it'll be like, I don't think anyone's going to maintain 50% market share indefinitely, but there'll always be a little bit of that.
So this might have been like encompassed in that, but how do order flow structures influence centralization or decentralization? Do you have an answer for that? And if platforms are biased towards the incumbent market makers, and what kind of effect that has on DeFi? Is it bad for DeFi?
Yeah, I think there's like a clear example of like how the platform's design choice will affect how the liquidity you're gonna end up with. So like for example, if you compare different solver model, the Uniswap X solver model is focusing on trying to bring in the RFQ liquidity where they didn't have. They have all the Uniswap V2, V3 pools, but now they want to enhance by providing potentially better price for user with RFQ liquidity, sure. But the design is basically they will give the whitelisted list of filler who are mostly market maker the quotes and then let them to bid for a good price. If they win the price, they will have a 2 blocks advantage time to fill the order. So then you see comparing Uniswap's volume breakdown of which filler actually filled the liquidity. You see that Uniswap X has 80% of volume are actually filled by market maker, 20% are AMM. But comparing CalSwap and OneInch, it's like 80%. It's the opposite. It's 80% AMM, 20% are market maker. So I think it's definitely to the platform themselves. They have the responsibility and have the influence on like what we'll end up with. So yeah, I think like 0x had a design where like trying to mitigate the MEV impact on user. We're trying to build a predictive model to see like if the AML liquidity will have a slippage happening and then it will route to the RFQ. So that's another example, I guess, to show that the platform has a choice and the power to potentially adjust and like help user in either direction, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you're the expert on this, but I'll just say I think it is a hard problem because execution quality is not deterministic. So I'm sure Uniswap designed their system for some good reason, right? Like maybe they want higher guarantees around execution quality or something.
So there you were touching upon MEV, and could you maybe just explain what MEV is, and maybe one of the paths to take there is how different auction models, which is kind of a bit deeper down into MEV, how they will affect, or how using a different platform will end up with a different auction model.
Yeah, sure. My understanding, I guess like the most broad example to cover most people's use cases is that when you swap on DEX today, when you access the AMM liquidity, the AMM liquidity's price is decided by a curve. So the price will move on the curve depending on at what point or which part of liquidity you access. And so if you are the first one accessing liquidity, you are accessing top of the block price. But then if you are say like the end of block user that accessing liquidity, it already moved away from what you saw in the front end. So the difference between quoted price and the settled price is slippage. And slippage is basically the MEV implication on the user side. That's what I understand. And how did that happen? It could happen naturally, but also it could be because the MEV bots, who are basically searcher trying to make profits by front running the transaction or sandwiching the transaction, are checking all the user transactions in the mempool, and they'd be like, oh, there's a profit to make based on my simulation. I'm gonna take the user transaction and mine, put it to the miner, and user gonna be suffering from some slippage. So to your question, like how does the MEV, a different auction can decide the user's MEV? I guess like one thing we touched earlier is that RFQ order can be one way to avoid MEV, as in like when you see the price on the front end, it's gonna be whatever you get in your wallet. So it's like there's no difference of expectation, and so this by nature zero MEV. I guess there are all kinds of like order flow auction happening as well, where a lot of the projects trying to help user to get some value back from the MEV attacks. So for example, there's I guess whole genre called order flow auction, where you can share your transaction information to a private mempool, and then there's a bunch of permission. Actually, it's for the Flashbots map shares setup, it's permissionless. Actually, for most of the map blocker as well, it's permissionless. Searcher can try to add background to the transaction, make a profit, give some refunds back to user. So that supposedly is redistributing some MEV to user to improve their price. So that's one example I can think of. I know some like Telegram bots projects, they know their transaction order flow has really high value, and the block builder is bidding to get their flow. So they now have some like special arrangement, I guess like exclusive deal, to send only their transaction to one builder. The builder can win the block much better, and meanwhile rebate them back like whatever the extra value they were able to keep from the validator. So that's what I understand, yeah.
Okay. In terms of MEV, it takes a lot of different forms, and I was wondering, now that we have solutions such as Flashbots, such as Matcha Auto, that will help you avoid the MEV or avoid the implications of the MEV, what do you think? Where do you think that's going? Do you feel like there's going to be rebates as an expectation from MEV protection in general? Do you feel like MEV will just kind of disappear in terms of the narrative?
Yeah, I'm also curious your take on this, but I feel like overall MEV is too complicated for user to even understand about, and so a lot of this design here doesn't really make sense to user side. Maybe abstracting it away is a better solution on the UX side. Like basically either you say it's gonna be whatever the price you see, which is RFQ order, or you make it back to the limit order, right? So like a user is saying, I'm gonna just swap this amount of token and stuff. I have expectation of how long it will be filled, like expiry time, which I guess is translating MEV to a time option. So I know Matcha had new UX design, so I'm also curious how you guys had considered how to abstract all those concepts away from user, or like make it more explicitly, make user be aware, pick the slippage threshold, which I know a lot of users don't really even care about.
Yeah, with Matcha Auto, we're basically just trying to abstract all that away so the user doesn't need to know or care about it. Because I just think it's way too complicated.
But you do keep the option for Matcha standard, so user can also choose to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So they could do it themselves if they want to. Can't force them to use Matcha Auto, but I think it's a good option a lot of the time.
How is the adoption, I guess, or like users' reaction towards Matcha Auto? Like, do they appreciate abstracting it away, or?
I think they do. I mean, we're always working on improving the user experience as well. I think in the first iteration, there are probably some areas where you could kind of communicate concepts more clearly and stuff like that. But on the chains where it's live, it actually does the vast majority of trades. I want to say it's like 70 to 80% of trades go through Matcha Auto.
Oh wow, okay.
But not by volume. Like much higher volume trades tend to go through standard.
I see. Is it more like long tail trades and smaller trades, or?
I think it's a combination of everything.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I think there are I'm not sure people are going for the MEV protection necessarily. They know that it might be a thing that would benefit them, but I wonder if maybe the gasless would be more of an appeal. Like, oh, actually, I can just trade my tokens without the gas, and therefore they're using the Matcha Auto. But it's kind of a blend effect, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of value props.
But once you go Matcha Auto, you tend not to go back, right? That's kind of what we see. So, yeah. Just to wrap it off and kind of give you some time to talk. Is there anything you wish people would understand more about, say, Flashbots, MEV, or order flow? just for the more, maybe for the more broad audience or the more technical audience, just in general, what you want to get out there?
Personally, I'm more interested into like researching on how the block building game happening right now today in the settlement layer. There's like, I think it's not very optimistic of how the situation right now is, which is, it's similar again. It's like you see the market maker, they have the first touch when they are behind the router as a market maker giving quotes. And if they didn't win the RFQ order, it goes to AMM. They have the touch again in the mempool to try to like MEV, making bots like arbitraging or whatever towards the user. If the user were smart enough to send it to a private mempool with maybe like OFA searcher, it's the same market maker again, like trying to searching and making trades against the user. And then when you like go down to the block builder side, the top 2 builders are also like basically searching firm and who are also market maker, and that's taking over 60-70% of market share. And they are now actually starting the relay as well. So I hope like more research and like solution could come up to solve this like centralization monopoly situation. Yeah.
I agree. I think having a centralized set of block builders is a much worse problem than having a centralized set of market makers. Much more existential.
Right.
Great. So yeah, I really appreciate the order flow art. I actually use it quite a lot. Just to make heads or tails of the whole ecosystem. So good job on that, and looking forward to some more research from Flashbots.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for joining us.